Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Streaming Alchemy. I'm John Mahoney. And on today's show, we're going to take a look at some different ways to manage your audio. And specifically, we're going to look at how you could take a very large number of participants in something like a virtual event and manage their audio through sort of 4 or 5 total sliders that you'll have to deal with. So hopefully this will be an interesting one, but we have a few things that, I think in here that would be useful in a lot of situations. So before we get to that, I want to invite everybody, please, if you'd like to join us, just post anything in the comments below. Also, if you'd like to come on air with us, we have a link in the show notes and here on screen. So if you click on that, somebody from the studio will get you on with us and we can talk about whatever it is we're discussing at that point. Okay, so let's get started. And first, I'll start with the comments here that we have. So we have a few people that jumped in. So we have, let's see. So we have Mr. Advent Media. So thank you. I appreciate you joining. It's always good. Jesper, hi. Thank you, Jesper. Great to have you here. So, thank you. I appreciate that. Hopefully this will be something you find useful. Okay, then. So here's what we're going to look at in this show. We are going to take a scenario where I have a vMix session with 12 remote guests coming in. This would be very typical for something like a Zoom meeting, a virtual Zoom meeting, where you could have lots of different participants that would all be interacting. And one of the challenges with that is if you have everybody, every one of those 12 guests being routed to an audio engineer so they can manage their volumes when they're talking and handle all of that. So what I thought, based on experience we've had, is that in most of these large meetings, you'll very, very rarely have more than 3 or 4 people that are actively engaged in talking at any given time. And other people are sort of sitting to the sidelines. They may speak, they may say other things, but they're not one of the active primary speakers. So I thought, what if we took something that would let you, as opposed to routing your individual guest to audio sources in the mixer, to instead set up 4 buses that are my main audio buses. And then what I do is I assign guests to those buses and I route the buses to the mixer. And the big advantage here is that I can make dynamic routing decisions about who goes into each one of those buses. Basically, I have, a lot of flexibility with scripting to do this. And this means that I can dynamically say who are my 4 main guests that are active, and their audio will route individually. So what do we do, though, with everybody else? We take a 5th bus, and everybody else has their audio routed to that 5th bus. And this means that I can have, for an audio engineer, or anybody even working in vMix directly, you could sit there and go, I am actually going to have 5 sliders I need, regardless of how many guests I have. Sliders 1 to 4 will be for the 4 active guests, and slider 5 will be for everybody else. And we handle all that inside of vMix using some scripting. So let's dig a little bit more into the vMix session so we can sort of go through how this is set up. So inside of vMix, we'll let me slide this up. Here you can see I've set up a whole lot of guests. So these are all just stills with a little audio in the back. But so all of these guests are here. So I have the first 12 inputs in vMix set up for my 12 guests in this case. And then I have a background and a couple of multi-box shots, a 2-box and a 4-box that I have here. And then I have something, and this is sort of the heart of how we're going to do the automation around this. I have 4 mixes. And these 4 mixes that I'm using, mix 2, 3, 4, and 5, that's how I will manage my guest in all of my visuals. So if I want this one of mix 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, these are my 4 active guests. So when I assign a guest to mix 2, they become one of the boxes or even a standalone shot for the guest as a solo. And I know now that guest 1 is always in mix 2 and guest 2 is in mix 3, etc. So this means that I can know who my 4 main guests are, who my 4 focus guests are, simply by controlling who's in the mixes and then using scripting to see who is in that mix. So the advantage to this is that it makes it very easy for me to sort of control what's going on. And the way I have this set up with some shortcuts is that I can select one of my 12 guests and then assign them to one of these mixes. So if you look here is let's just see. So we'll take guest 6. That's this person right here that you see. And so we're going to assign guest 6 to mix 1. So I will just select guest 6 and I assign them to mix 1. And now you see, because I changed who's in the mix, that changed all my outputs. So if I go back and look at my 2 box, she's also there. So you can see now this gives me a lot of flexibility by just changing the mixes. All of my multi-box shots and my composites now will all just respect those 4 mixes as my active guest. But the other thing that you will notice is if you look over here, the way I'm handling the audio routing is through using the buses here. So I have audio buses. And so I said bus A, B, C, and D are aligned with whoever is in mix 1, mix 2, 3, 4, and 5. So those mixes. And the way I push this out to a external mixer is if you go into settings and you go to audio outputs. Now I don't have it set up here, but I actually can take and route each of these to any virtual or physical device for routing audio. So in this case, I could pick a Dante channel. I could pick a port on a USB analog interface to send that out. So I have the ability now to take the first 4 of these, A, B, C, and D, and send that out through physical hardware, whether it's IP, like over a cable, or it's a physical analog device. So that gives me a lot of flexibility there. But this means that I can have all 12 guests and whoever I put into one of these channels, their audio goes out directly. It also means that from the point of view of the A1 engineer, the audio engineer who's actually controlling this, they don't have to sit there and figure out some wide desk where you turn around and say, now I have like 12 or even more sliders that I have to deal with and track. Now you sort of work cooperatively with what's going on set. I have my 4 active guests that a director picks, and the audio engineer knows I just use these 4 sliders to manage their levels and control that. And because I also have E, which is another bus that I can use beyond the first 4, this is where I put everybody else. So this is how that sort of control works. I have my 4 main focus and my 1 slider to control the levels of everybody or mute them completely. I can do whatever I want on how that goes out. But that can still be something that a director or somebody else will listen to say, somebody else is trying to talk. I may want to bring them in and make them active. So a lot of flexibility with how this gets set up. And behind all this, we have a script that's running everything. So if you look here at this lower corner here, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you, here are the people that I have set up here. And let me just put guest 1 back into Rem 1 so you can see. So maybe a little hard to see this, and I apologize, but here is the audio routing at the bottom of each of these. So person 1, which is my first guest, they're going to A, 2 to B, 3 to C, and 4 to D. And everybody else in here is all set to bus E. And that's exactly what we just described. My 4 individual controls, and then my 5th control for everybody else. So if I were to go now and replace one of these guests, so let's just look at the people here. So we'll do what I did before. I'm going to replace guest, the REM slot 1, this person up here, with guest 7. And I'll put that in there. Now, what you'll notice is, if you can see over here, guest slot 1 has been routed now to E. Person 1 has been routed to E, but person 2, 3, and 4 are B, C, and D, but now person 7 is an A. And this is just a script we have running in the background that does this. And so I also have the ability to drop somebody. So I turn around and say, let me drop the person in guest 1. I have a little empty button that puts them there, and that just empties that out. So now you'll see that guest 7 has been moved to E, and guest 1, which was there before, they're still at E, so nothing's changed. So this gives me the flexibility not just to add these guests, but also to pull guests out completely and make this into something where there's just no audio. So if a typical case would be, I'd be sitting here, but I'm only going to be doing a 2-box. So if I come here, I'll just sort of put a 2-box on. I may turn around and say, I don't want to have guests 3 and 4 there. So I could just go and blank those out. So you can see I removed those, and we don't have, those guests sort of sitting there anymore. And that, just clears everything out and makes it easy. But, I can go with any of these now and, just put everybody back the way they were. And, so that would give me, fat fingers here. So that would give me everything set up for that. So this is sort of a very high level of how this can work. But I think the general model that we're looking at is that all of this becomes very, very manageable, even with very large numbers of guests. And audio is always a problem with that. So I know we sort of jumped through that pretty quickly, but let's actually jump into the code we have, the script we have that handles this. And I think you'll see that it's actually not that challenging a script, certainly not conceptually. So here is the basic flow of this script that we have. At the top, I set up a few things which are basically just arrays. So this is the indices that we have for mixes. Now, I'll just touch on this because it could be very confusing if I don't, but I don't want to get too much into the weeds. But inside vMix's XML, the actual how it manages state for everything, it refers to mix 2, 3, 4, and 5, the mixes that we would be using as mix 2, mix 3, mix 4, mix 5. But in all the API calls that control those mixes, they are 0 referenced. So they treat those as mix index 1, index 2, index 3, index 4. So it can be confusing. So these are the indexes that vMix will use in the code. And one of the things you'll see when I reference these and I want to look for stuff in the XML, I just add 1 to them. So it gives me it gives me an easy way to handle this. The other thing I have with the buses, these are the buses we use. A, B, C, and D are the main individuals, and E is the one for everybody. And then the other thing we have is the last keys. So what we're looking for in this script is if the person that was in slot A has been changed, we want to know and then make all the adjustments to the audio routing. So that's basically what we have up here. And then we just sit inside a loop. This is very familiar stuff. We actually go in here and we try to read the vMix XML. That's where we get everything. That's the state of vMix on this loop. And then what we're doing, and the reason we use these mixes, is it makes it very easy for us to say which guest is in slot 1, 2, 3, and 4. And, this means that I don't have to worry about how I built any individual multi-box input. I can build them any way I want. All I'm worried about is who's in mix 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then I know who my focus guests are, and everybody else is less focused. So that's where I'm going through 0 to 3. So I'm looking at those 4 mixes here. And I mentioned about the mix numbering. So what I'm doing here is I'm turning around and saying, let's get the mix number that we're using. Right? And so on our first loop, that will be, we're pulling in mix 1 in the index and then 2 because we add 1. That's the issue with vMix numbering versus APIs. So we're pulling that in, and then we're going and we're getting the XML associated with that mix. And that's going to say there's a preview and an active. So that's what I'm going to pull. I want to pull who's active in that mix, which is my active input. So assuming that we found that node and it was there was a mix in what we're looking at, we go in and we pull the information about who is active in here. And that's basically just the active node. And then out of there, I turn around and say, let me get the active number, because in the vMix XML, it's just using numbers, input 5, input 3, input 1. So I just pull that. So everything we've done up here is just turning around and saying, for whichever mix I'm looking at, as we do this loop, what's the input that's assigned to that? And then what I do is I find the unique key for that input. So every input in vMix has its own what's called a GUID, a global universal ID that uniquely identifies it. So I'm just pulling that out and saying, let me get that. And assuming I found that, now I actually have the unique ID of the input assigned to each one of the mixes. And so I'm going now and saying, if the guest key, that's the one that I just pulled out, is the same as the last guest key for this slot, then I don't do anything. But if they're different, that's the not equals there we have, then I just have to go and do 3 things. Since it's changed, I have to go and say, let me take, and for the last key, pull it out of the bus it was in. So if it's mix 1, I'm pulling it out of, if it's sort of mix 2 on here, I'm pulling it out of bus A, etc. So that's all I'm doing here, pulling it out. And then I'm routing it back to bus E, which is, what I have set up in my array up above. The 4th one is bus E. So this is saying, take the person that's in there now, the input that's in there now, and put them in the bucket with everybody else. And then route the new guest, the one that we see this is changed to, and put that into the correct A, B, C, or D audio bus. And make sure you pull them out of bus E, because they were sitting over there in bus E. Make sure they're not anymore, because we don't want 2 different audio sources for the same guest, because then you can have sorts of phasing issues and other things where, potentially they have slightly time delays and creates echoes or other things. So that pulls them out of the everybody bus. And then we just update and say, okay, now that we have a new guest in there, make that the previous guest. So when I do this loop the next time, I know whether it changed the next time. So it gives me a very clean way to do it. So that's it. That is the whole script. And then we just, if there was an error, it'll just end the try, go back to sleep, and loop again to keep going. So it will give you a lot of the flexibility you want, but that's all you're doing. In the background, you're running this script, and you're just sorting people by saying, if I put a guest's input in one of the 4 mixes, which are my active guest, put those into the corresponding audio buses. Otherwise, if I pulled somebody out, everybody else and that person I just pulled out sit in bus E. So that is really it. And I thought it was just an interesting show concept, because there are lots of different use cases for sort of managing state around who is active on screen. And using those mixes gives you that. And this sort of thing where I track, I can make all sorts of decisions. So let me see. I think we have another comment up here. So Jesper's asking, if you empty one of the seats in the panel, can you automatically change to view with only 3-person view? So a couple of things with that. You can do a lot more. One of the things that I was trying to do in setting this up was to make it easier for the audio engineer to know like who's in 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I didn't want to move anybody around. So I didn't want to do things where I move the person from mix 4 to mix 3 or something like that, because that would swap the faders on the audio engineer then, because that mix is being routed to a different bus. So you could have multiple layouts sort of set up that you want to switch to, and you could switch to them dynamically. So I could turn around and say, if I lose guest 4, switch to a 2 box instead of, or I mean a 3 box instead of a 4 box or something of that sort. And that's logic that you're just using because in that script that we just looked, I know if there's nobody in a particular mix, I would know that would show up. So I could take and trigger logic off of that. I would probably not do it in this piece of the code. I would probably have something else that sort of sat back and was looking at this, or it would run when I did a drop. I would run a script that would sit there and say, if I was showing a guest that had that now became empty, go in and go to, based on which guest it was, go to a multi-box that, doesn't include that. So if I had 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I dropped 3, I could just write a simple script that would say, okay, just put up a 2 box with the first 2 guests, and we'll work with that. So something like that could work. But there are different ways to do it. But part of the intention was to make this work for the audio engineer. And in fact, one of the things that I had, I'll sort of pop this up over on the side in vMix here in my preview. I had something that I wanted to send out to the audio engineer. And my thinking was you could actually send them, we have this set up to go out, in this case, it's going out output 4 in vMix. So that's our output we have right here. So you could actually set this up as an NDI feed that's going to the A1, and they could see this. And this could, you could be doing things where you pull the names of the people. You could pull state information on state for these people. So, it could be anything that, would be visible inside of vMix, whether it's XML directly in vMix or XML from an outside source. Like you could be getting the names from something like Live to Air Z. And I could also have like hand raisers and do those types of indicators. So I left space down here that you could composite these types of elements in, because that could be useful to the audio engineer. It would also be possible, I was thinking, to put something here that could work on a timer. So when somebody changed, you could do something like put a red border around this that would fade out over 10 seconds. So the audio engineer, if they, just look down, they'd see, okay, this guest changed, so maybe I need to focus on them. So some interesting things we wanted to do around that side, but I figured that was sort of too far afield from the core of the show. But that was definitely, something that I templated here for ways to do this. But hopefully that answered your question. But there's a lot of stuff we can trigger off of to run scripts or to execute a shortcut sequence that could do some of this stuff. All right, then. So I know this was a relatively short show, but hopefully you found it useful. Why don't we wrap the main show up and we'll go into our post show, and you could feel free to ask any other questions or even drift off into other technology topics that may be interesting to you. So I will probably have another show in 2 or 3 weeks. So again, we're trying to do this as regularly as we can. But if you can't hang around for the post show, please, I will see you in a few weeks then again. If you can, I'll see you in a few moments. So until then, take care. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the post show here. So there's a few things I wanted to throw out because there was a lot of debate when I threw out the idea for this of how to do this, and we bounced through a couple of ideas. Great team around me with some really good suggestions. So let's see. Oh, Wait, we just gotta before I ramble on. We got Stefan said hi from Germany. Can we please get a better proper audio control in vMix? Yeah, I agree with you. All of the audio that we're getting from vMix is very, very difficult to work with, especially with scripting. Uh, it is something that would make life much better. I mean, if I could actually pull values in and have true audio meters that I could display related to different things that I could pull out into different types of interfaces, that would be great. And I agree with you. Getting something that is more specific uh, in terms of audio levels would be really good as well, because we don't have a lot of control, and the control is a little bit blocky, especially on things for like triggers, where you can do triggers on audio, but doesn't exactly work the way I would like for some of these things. It can tell you when something triggers above but not below, and so you can't always, you're trying to fake it into doing what you want. So Stefan, I agree with you. It'd be really great to see that, and also just in terms of the controls in vMix themselves, especially if you're using something like a Behringer X Touch, and you're actually controlling the audio inside of vMix, even though you're using, an external controller. Knowing that vMix had, really solid audio controls would be great. But the fact that vMix lets me do scripting just makes me greedy for more capabilities. But in terms of all of the other switching solutions that I've had the opportunity to use, that scripting in vMix, really changes the game for a lot of capabilities, especially around automation. So thank you, Stefan. So I was mentioning we had a lot of back and forth about how to do this. And so one of the things that came up was putting people in the mixes as a simple way to find guests. And I think that was a great idea. One of the other guys suggested that, so I won't take credit for that one. But that makes it really easy now to know who my active guests are. And that made it easier with the scripting that we're doing. The other piece, though, is there's some things here that didn't work the way I would do if this were an actual production solution. And more specifically, if I end up putting multiple people or the same person into multiple boxes accidentally, I would put guest one into box, active guest one and active guest 3 or 4 or something, that can screw up their routing. And the way I did this was really something where I was trying to be lighter touch. But what would probably, if I were doing this in a production, the way I would probably approach this would be to take and simply have a loop that went back and read the state of everything directly from the vMix XML. And then based on what the setup was, I would, every time I made that loop, I would say, I'm pulling people out and putting them in the everybody bucket, or I have my 4 active guests and I'm handling that. Because right now, it's not doing it sort of all together. It's not pulling all the data, making a decision and creating the new map and populating that with who gets routed to what bus. So there are a few scenarios where you can get things mixed up. So if I were to do this again, I would probably use more of I pull all the information inside a loop, and then at the end of that loop, I just turn around and say, how do I assign each one of these guests to an audio bus, each one of these inputs to an audio bus, and work with that. Try not to optimize anything, but that would probably be a more effective way to do this. And, I'm just putting it out there because if you're going to use this for production, the basic concept, I think, has a lot of use cases. But in terms of something that's really robust and fault tolerant, doing it where you pull all the state once and then make the assignments once, I think would be a better approach to this. So just sharing that so you guys could sort of build from there. But I also think having, pulling more data out from state data out from both from vMix and from third-party apps, like Livetear, Livetear Z, where those are the scenarios where you could have this many guest in there, that could be very, very helpful, to an A1 operator where they were looking at this stuff and could see that. So that was really what I wanted to touch on. So just to give you a sense that we did debate multiple ways to do this, and there are some cool things that could be done with this. And the other thing that I always would enjoy is anything that vMix could add to provide more state data, more dynamic updates to state data. That stuff would be great. It just makes what we can do with scripting so much better. So hopefully, that will be something that we'll see in vMix 30 or 31 or something coming in the future. So, all right, everyone. If you don't have any other questions or any other things you'd like to discuss, we can probably call it a wrap now. As I've mentioned, we are trying to do shows every 2 to 3 weeks. Sometimes we can't. Sometimes, we're fairly busy on the neural net side of the house. So we have a lot of stuff going on there. But we will, we'll definitely try to keep these on a regular schedule. And as I mentioned in previous shows, we are planning for something that will get us kicked off to season 6, which will have, a few new things that I think will definitely be working toward providing in our new season. That will be a little different from what we do today. So, you demand. Always good to see you. Thank you for joining. I appreciate it. So, all right, everyone. I think this is it. So, as a wrap up, thank you for hanging out for the post show, and thank you for just being, loyal watchers. I really do appreciate everybody who joins the show and participates. So, I'm sorry, I'm sort of wrapping things down too soon here. So we have Kutso from South Africa. He's using LTA with vMix in a very complex way. But the struggle is pulling data from Zoom to vMix, like hand raises. So first, thank you for using one of our products. I definitely appreciate it. Inside of our Live to Air Z product, we actually get all the XML data from vMix, all the state data from vMix, and we have things like hand raises and other stuff. So if you'd like, just schedule a demo with me, and I can actually show you that specifically in action. That would just be on our neural net site, so neuralnet.com, and you can go there and schedule the demo, and I'd be happy to show you that. So, yeah, the hand raises, just again, the hand raises are the hand raises from Zoom. So I'm sorry if I meant the hand raises with Zoom. So this is something that, you could integrate this pretty cleanly into vMix, just reading the XML, similar to what we did today. So OMT is coming to Live to Air. We're working on a new release of Live to Air that will be out within the next couple of months. So I would expect OMT to be a part of that release. So thank you. And thank you for asking for that. I mean, we're very excited about OMT. So we think that could be a real game changer on a lot of fronts, especially because it's open source. So, and OMT is already in LTA-Z. So in Live to Air, our Live to Air for Zoom product, LTA-Z. So it's already there. So we are just getting through things one product at a time. So, all right then. So I'll give you everybody a moment because I've been jumping the gun a bit here, but all right. I guess this is good then. So thank you all. Thank you for the questions and comments. Really appreciate that. And I will see everybody in a few weeks, 2 or 3. So until then, be safe, be well.